Hey guys, and welcome to my FSX Mega IFR tutorial. In this tutorial, you're going to learn how to read approach plates, how to plan an IFR flight, how to use SkyVector to plan a flight, learn the basics of using, planning, and flying with Foreflight. Okay guys, let's get this Mega IFR tutorial show on the road. I'm here at SkyVector.com. This is one of the coolest places there is for flight sim enthusiasts, and I'm sure most of you are probably familiar with it. And it's really simple to use, and I'm going to go over how to use it as soon as I show you how to read an approach plate. So let's get started, and I'm going to go up here to the top left here, and I'm just going to type in KBNA for the Nashville Airport. It's my hometown. It's one I'm most familiar with. And I'm going to right click right on the airport, and you think you left click, but you don't. To use this website, you have to right click first, and then I'm going to click on the hyperlink for the Nashville International Airport, and that will take us to the information page about the Nashville International. And I'm going to scroll down to the bottom, and that's where all the approach plates live. And the approach plate I'm going to show you how to read is the ILS or localizer DME runway 02 right. So let's give that a click. And let's zoom in so we can see the approach plate better. And now, I'll grant you, this is just very daunting at first sight. It's just a mess. But once you learn the basics of reading an approach plate, it's actually pretty simple. This top part is called the briefing, and it tells you what type of approach plate it is. It's an ILS approach plate for the Nashville International Airport. And in the top left is probably the number one information you're after, and that's the ILS frequency. It's 111.75. And that is also repeated down here in the plan view where you see this localizer box. It says 111.75. And this is the frequency that you'll enter into your Nav1 radio. So going up here and going to the next box, you see it's the approach course is 021 degrees. And all that is the runway heading. And if you go down here to the plan view, you can see it says 021 degrees for the runway heading. And this other information, like this missed approach, it tells you what to do in case you missed the approach. It says you climb to 1,300 feet, then climbing right turn to 3,000 on the BNA radial 072 to the Lennon intersection at BNA, and it'll be 25.1 DME out from the VOR and hold. But let's get on with the recognition, what you need to look for when you're looking at approach plate. This arrow looking thing right here is called the ILS feather. And what you generally want to do is look for, towards the end of the feather, is you want to look for lines that intersect it. And sometimes there'll be more than one. And this bold line that intersects it is called a feeder route. And it's a feeder route from the Shelbyville VOR. And reading these plates is just that simple. Now this little crooked line right here is indicating that this VOR is not to scale. It's saying, look, this VOR's location is not actually here, because the rest of this plate is to scale, and it's why you can overlay it on top of your moving map, because the rest of this is to scale. And that broken line just indicates this is not to scale. And then this bottom part here, this is called the profile view. Okay, let's get on to what some of these other things mean. Where this feeder route crosses the ILS, look here at the very top, you see the letters IAF, and this is what you're looking for. This is the initial approach fix for this approach. And if you look down, it says right here, this 15 in this box here, it means you're 15 miles out from this localizer. And this box here, SYI, is the Shelbyville VOR. It means this intersection is 25.3 miles out from this VOR. And so when you're planning the approach or to fly this in IFR conditions, you fly to this VOR, and once you reach this VOR, you need to be at 5,000 feet. That's what this is telling you. You need to be at 5,000 feet, and you need to fly out on the 324 radial from the Shelbyville VOR. And this 25.3 is the same here. It's saying this intersection, this Adkins intersection, is 25.3 miles out. And that gives you what you need to know to find this intersection. Okay, so what does this other stuff mean? Well, there's various fixes as you fly down this ILS feather. The next fix is the Loudon fix, and it's 12 miles out from the ILS. And then the next fix would be this UNIV, and it's 8.8 miles out. The next fix is Skaggs, 7.3, and the last one is Collier at 4.5 miles out. So what is the significance of these fixes as you go down? Well, you'll find that out when you come down here to the plan view. It's right here. It's telling you on the profile view that at the Adkins intersection you need to be at 5,000 feet. And that's what this is repeating. It's repeating this number here. And once you get to this Adkins intersection, you are then allowed to descend down to 4,000 feet. And this until you get to the Loudon intersection, which is 12 miles out. You're not allowed to go below 4,000 until you reach this intersection. Now, I'll grant you, probably, especially in Flight Simulator, you will be receiving the glide slope information this far out in Flight Simulator, but it's not valid. And how do I know it's not valid? Well, technically, it's not valid because it's so far out. And this 2500 and this lightning bolt here is what tells you it's not valid. It's saying don't pay attention to glide slope information until you get to the Skaggs intersection, and then at 2,500 feet, and then you're allowed to follow the glide slope information. But to be honest with you, most of the time, in Flight Simulator anyway, I will go ahead and start using the glide slope information here. In the real world, if you're a real world pilot, you know you're not supposed to. But anyway, you can use these step downs if you want to follow real world procedures. You can use these step downs, and that's what each of these fixes are, is they are the step downs on the ILS approach. And then the very last thing I need to show you is the minimums. And the minimums are, when you fly on this approach, is this 790. You cannot descend below 790 feet on this approach if you do not have the runway in sight. This 790 is called the decision height. Sometimes it's abbreviated DH for decision height. Other times it's abbreviated DA for decision altitude. And that 790 feet is something you got to watch very carefully when you're on the approach path, the glide slope rather, to this runway. When you reach 790 feet, you must shoot a missed approach if you do not have the runway in sight. And so that's really all there is to it. So knowing this information that I gave you, it's really not that hard to decipher what we need to do. So we need to find the Shelbyville VOR to plan our flight, and we know we need to be at 5,000 feet, and we know we need to follow the 324 radial from the VOR, and we need to fly out 25.3 miles, and that will take us to the initial approach fix, which is the Adkins intersection, where we will then make a right turn to 021 degrees and follow the localizer and the glide slope down to the runway. And that's all there is to it. So let's go back out to SkyVector here and see how we need to flight plan this. So as we come down, the shovelable VOR is right here. And let's zoom in just a little bit so you can see it better. Here is the shovelable VOR, and it's what we need to cross. And the frequency for it is inside this blue box. It's 109.0. And this is very important too, and I didn't cover it in the other, but this is the Morse code identifier of the VOR, and this is something that we need to do whenever we're navigating, is to identify the VORs and the ILS and all our frequencies to make sure we're following the correct VOR and the correct ILS, is we need to identify them. So just zooming out a little bit, let's find a suitable airport to take off from so we can fly this ILS approach. And this blue box here, this is due to layers. This layers, click on layers and turn off these check boxes because they're kind of annoying right now, and then close it, and that should get, well, let's try that again. Sigmats, that's what it is. Turn off that and close it because it's just annoying right now. Okay, and the airport I first wanted to use was this Fayetteville airport and then fly directly up to the shovelable VOR. But I decided not to do that, and here's why. When you fly IFR, let me go to the world low map. When you fly IFR, you must fly these airways. They're called Victor Airways. They have names. This Victor Airway from the Fayetteville airport is Victor 321. And the reason I didn't want to do this airport is because it would put us directly on this airway as we go to the shovelable VOR, and that would take away a little of the fun. So I wanted to do one that was a little more challenging. So the one I chose, and let's go back to the world VFR map, the one I chose instead will be this Winchester. That way when we take off from the Winchester VOR, we will intercept this Victor 321 radio, because ATC expects us to be on these IFR Victor Airways when we're navigating IFR. So let's go ahead and plan. Let's see what this looks like if we plan it. So we're going to just right click, and I'm going to choose to plan the Winchester Municipal Airport. And you can see up here in the departure airport, it puts the Winchester Municipal up in our departure. And I'm going to just click and drag to drag the Nashville airport down. Right click on it and choose plan, and that'll set it in the destination box. Now at first glance, zoom out just a little bit, we're not going to be able to fly anything like this straight path when we're flying IFR. So we know we got to go via the shovelable VOR. So let's zoom in just a little bit. And this is the shovelable VOR. So let's click and drag our line over to the shovelable VOR. And it's going to ask us, do we want the airport or do we want to plan the VOR? Well, we want to plan the VOR. And also, we need to intersect this Victor 321 airway. But since we're going to be using Foreflight on this trip, I'm going to use it to guide us to another intersection on this Victor 321 airway. So to find that intersection, let's go back to the IFR low. And the intersection we're going to use is this Cuxy. And whenever you intercept a airway, you must do it at an intersection. You can't just fly here and intercept like you would if it was VFR weather, just intercept a radial from the VOR station. Whenever you intercept in your IFR, you intercept a airway, you must do it at an intersection. So let's intercept it at the Cuxy intersection and plan Cuxy. And there, now what we need to do is find the intersection for the ILS. So let's go back to the World VFR. And what was that intersection? It was ATKNS. We'll just go at it after the. Now what I'm doing is clicking in this box. This is our route. It's saying our departure is from the Winchester Municipal, and from there we're flying to the Cuxy intersection and picking up the Victor 321 airway, and then it's showing us going to the Shelbyville VOR, and from the Shelbyville VOR we're going to the ATKNS Adkins. Yes, there it is. And you see I typed ATKNS and just hit the return key, and that is the ILS for runway 20 right. And we can go ahead and move this over because it's actually for this runway here. Just like that. And we'll just plant it right there to give us an accurate representation. Okay, let's zoom out. And you can see our route is a little crazy now. And it's actually not even going to look like this because we're going to take off and we'll, let's see, to about right there. We'll just play this GPS. And this is basically what our IFR flight is going to look like. We'll take off in the northerly direction. Then when we get 500 feet, we'll turn left and we'll use Foreflight and the information we put in it to fly us to this Cuxy intersection, and where we will pick up the Victor 321 airway to the Shelbyville VOR. And by the way, look over here. Over here, as I follow it, it highlights it in yellow, the leg that you're flying. Then we're at Cuxy, then we're on 321 airway, the Shelbyville VOR, then we will follow the 324 radial away until we intersect Adkins and then fly the ILS approach. And that's all there is to it. So let's go down, jump into Foreflight, and I'll show you exactly how to set this up in Foreflight. Okay, here I am inside of Foreflight, and I know I told you a little while ago how cool of a website SkyVector is for flight sim pilots, and it is cool, but let me tell you, Foreflight is so cool that SkyVector pales in comparison. This app is so powerful, so fun to use, and it just makes flying a joy, and I think all pilots should have it, and even flight sim pilots. So currently we're viewing the Maps tab, and let's go to the Airports tab, and let's see how you might go about searching for airport. So you can see in the search box it says you can search for an airport, a tail, and by that it means if you go to airport, just type in the tail number and it'll tell you who owns the airplane. And then you can of course type in the city. Let's just type in a city. We'll say Nashville. And you could type in BNA, it doesn't matter. And hit search. And there it brings up all the airports around Nashville. And let's just tap on BNA. And there's the Nashville airport. And now notice up top, the star is already yellow. I can untap that. Now what this does is it adds it to the favorites. If I want to add this to the favorites, I just tap the star, and then the favorites is the far left icon. It's the double star, and you can see Nashville has been added as one of my favorites here. And you can edit this list, and you can also just reorder it any way you like, and I can put Nashville at the top. You can also delete airports from your favorites right here, just that easy. And you can just tap done, and you can also delete them by swiping from right to left. You don't have to go to the edit tab to delete them. And let's just tap to the right. And if you are viewing this in landscape mode, you don't have to tap this star for your favorites to show. It shows by default automatically in the landscape orientation. And then at, you see the four buttons to the right that says taxiways, nearby, comments, and FBOs. If you tap taxiways, that'll just bring up the airport diagram of whichever airport you currently have showing, and tap close. And you can tap nearby, and that will do the same thing as searching Nashville. It'll bring up the same list. And of course, if you go to the far left, you see the little clock icon. That will bring up a list of the current airports that you've recently looked for. So that's another way to find the airport that you've currently looked for. And you can tap browse. And just like an iPhone, you have a alphabetical shortcut list to find, like, say, Tennessee. And then if I want to find Nashville real quick, just pull your finger down the right side, and there it is, Nashville, BNA. We already had it showing, but you get the gist. And so we can search for it in the search box. You can favorite it, your airport. You can search for airport by the recent airports you've looked for, or you can search for them by browse. I believe all that's pretty intuitive. And now you see the frequencies tab is the current tab we have open down at the bottom. And all these tabs are basically pretty self-explanatory. And you can go to the weather tab and look at the METARs and TAFs and other forecasts. And then you got the runways tabs. And this one's kind of interesting, and that it'll tell you which runway has the best wind. And right now, runway 2 right has the best wind, but you can tell that by the green arrows. And then the procedures, of course, will have all your airport diagrams, your departure plates, your arrivals plates, and your approach plates. And you can just tap on one of these to view it, or just tap close and you'll go back to the airports tab. And that's pretty much it. Oh, one other thing I didn't show you. Just to the right of the search box, if you tap that little bullseye icon, whatever you want to call it, it will search airports according to your current location, which is handy if you're inside the airplane. It might help you find an airport that you need to fly to in an emergency, and or if you're on the ground. And that is just about it for the airports tab. Now let's go to the maps tab and we'll see how that works. Tab. And boy, the functionality here is just incredible. Hardly even know where to start. But I'll start by bringing up the Nashville airport. So we can, that's favorite routes. That's not what I want. I can look on, there's no recent routes. Of course, these icons mean something different on the Maps tab than they do the Airports tab. So let's go back to Airport so I can go back to Nashville. And we'll put that on the map. There we go. So I guess now we can go ahead and get to planning our route as we did last time. Now there are several ways to do that. One is by tapping the third icon over, and that will bring down the route editor. And you can see it's got KGKT, that's Gatlinburg Airport. We're not flying to there. Plus it's got John Tune in there. So that's not the route we want at all. So I'm going to clear the route. So we can just type K B N A spacebar, and I forgot the letters for the other airport we were going to use. let's see, I believe it was this Winchester, wasn't it? BGF. There's BGF, and just hit return. There we go. And now we also we can use the rubber band feature of flight planning. So let's just click and drag our line over to the Shelbyville VOR. And down at the bottom you see it says all, or nav. We want to use the nav, and we want the Shelbyville VOR. And the other one was the Victor Airway intersection. So let's change our maps. So let's go to IFR low, and there's Cuxy. We'll drag our line over to Cuxy, and plan it. Of course, it's a waypoint, so there it is, Cuxy. Let's plan that. And actually we need to reverse this route. I've got the route backwards, so let's reverse. There's a reverse button right under procedure. Tap the reverse button. There we go. And now the cool thing about I'm going to change the map back to the VFR sectional. And right now I'm going to zoom way in. If you want to see the full route, right above the airport's tab on the very bottom, you'll see a minus sign, a plus sign, and then you see a line with 3 circles in it. That will show your full route if you tap that button. So I'm going to tap that button, and now you can see our full route in there. Now the cool thing about Foreflight is we can now tap on procedure, and we want to do an approach into Nashville, and we're looking for the ILS DME runway 20 right, or 02 right, and we want to do the Adkins, the initial approach fix, and then how cool is this? We can say add route, and look, it just added that to our route and brought the map up on to our a moving map. And now we can follow ourselves on the moving map as we fly this ILS. So and then the only last thing we need to do is we'll just rubber band drag over here, and it's kind of hard to, about right there. We'll just plan the GPS coordinates, and that'll just give us something to fly to the Cuxy intersection when we take off. And that's all there is to it for flight planning that same exact route into Foreflight. Very easy, very intuitive, nothing to it. And the one last thing I want you to see at the very top of the screen, you got that red exclamation point, and you also have it down the bottom of the route editor. It says Navlog profile, and then you see a little suitcase icon right here, and it wants you to go ahead, and it says you need to pack for this trip, and it'll download fuel prices, and let's go ahead and do it. And you must do this while you got an internet connection. You can't do this in the airplane. And my goodness, this may take a while. No, it's going pretty quickly. And so that's it. That's how we use Foreflight to look up airports, and to use Foreflight to plan our flight. And I hope that was pretty intuitive for you. And the next thing is flying it. So I'll see you in the airplane. Okay guys, I'm back here in Foreflight. There's something I wanted to add to the tutorial here that I didn't do, and that's we need to save this information. If we ever plan on flying this trip again, uh, maybe this is a very popular trip that you're putting in here that you're going to fly multiple times. If you're going to do that, there's no sense in going back and doing all this stuff again. What we need to do is first we need to save the route, and then we need to we need to make a binder under the plates tab, and that will make all this information a lot easier to get to. So let's go ahead and there's no favorite routes. Let's see. There's how you favorite it. Favorite route name. We'll just call this what it says. BGF 2 BNA. Just like that. Now let's see if it's up there. Now that it has been added to our favorites. And the other thing I wanted to do is let's go to the plates tab on the bottom, and under my plates there's an arrow or to the side of it, and let's make a new plate by tapping the plus button, and we'll call this BGF 2 BNA. Click Save, and up top you can see we're now in that binder, so we'll click Add Plate, and we want to add the BNA plate. We want to add the airport diagram from Nashville, and we want to go down to the ILS and there it is, to right. Add that plate, and that's all we need from Nashville. Now let's click Add Plate again, and now we need to find the what was the other airport's name? It should be in here, but it's not. I'm having trouble even remembering it. What was it? BGF? Click Search. There we go. We want that airport diagram in here, and that's all we need. And I believe that's the only 3 charts that we need to save. And now when we get in the airplane and we fire up Foreflight, I of course want to pull up the Manchester or the Winchester airport diagram, and it'll show our position on the moving map and show us exactly what taxiway and what runway we're on. It's not that significant on a small airport like this, but if you're on a huge airport, Nashville or Boston or JFK or one of the larger airports, it's immensely helpful to see your position on that airport. But anyway, now that we got this in here, and the Nashville airport and the ILS, all this stuff is packed in here. The next time we make this trip, all this stuff will be here. And like I said, it's pretty useless for a trip like this tutorial, but if this is a trip that you fly a lot, making a binder and saving those routes will be immensely helpful to you the next time you go to fly that route again. Okay guys, back in Foreflight here. Let's pretend like it's been a month since we've flown that last trip that we planned, and now it's time to fly it again. So how do we bring all that information back up? Well, let's go to the Maps tab at the bottom, and this is why I wanted to show you how to save it, so we don't have to go through all the hassle of setting this back up again. So, and then tap on the stars, 2 stars, and there it is, the BGF to BNA. Tap on that, and bingo, there is our route back. just as we planned it. Now the one thing you don't see here is the approach plate on our map. So how do we get that back? Well, remember, go to the plates tab at the bottom. Remember I told you to set up a new binder for any flight that you're going to do multiple times, and this is why. So up at the top, click on the down arrow, and I'm going to click on BGF to BNA. There's our binder with our charts. Let's click on the ILS approach plate, and now all we do is click on the icon at the very top on the right side that's got the box with the arrow pointing, and say send to, and tap map. And there's our map overlay again. And let's zoom out to see our full route. And that's how fast you can bring up old routes that you've flown before. It's just that fast. Now, how much time did that save that we didn't have to go back and do all that again? Now, one other thing I might as well show you while I'm here is you can adjust the opacity of this approach plate. Right now we can't see through it at all, but if you tap the gear icon up at the top left, and then down at the very bottom you have a slider. You can slide this slider over and adjust the opacity to just where you want it, and then tap away from it, and now it's semi-transparent. And that's all. The next time you see me, we'll be in the airplane and we'll set up the cockpit and be ready to fly this IFR trip.